discovering I was autistic really not only unlocked a lot for me from this like unrelenting search for meaning and the why behind things,
Mhm.
but it also really has become foundationally who I am as my identity, you know, and
Mm, mm, mhm,
I had to work through a lot, and I mean a lot,
mhm,
of internalized ableism
mm,
around that diagnosis.
mhm,
Because my initial reaction was rooted in it of like, wait, hold on, not me. Like I have a master's and two businesses and I can make icon, all the things that
mhm,
are,
mhm,
and I really had to deconstruct and relearn like, what does it mean to be autistic?
mhm.
Um, and Dr. Megan Neff, a good friend of mine, my co-host on Divergent Conversations, has been instrumental and influential as she has for so many people, but
Mhm.
in helping me kind of re-examine everything with a completely different set of eyes.
Peace, my people. Welcome to I Must Be BUGN, where we have honest, relatable conversations packed with powerful insights that spark curiosity and help melanated, gifted, and neurodivergent folks feel seen, safe, and celebrated. Here, labels don't have to feel like pathology, and complexity feels comfortable. Welcome to the latest episode of I Must Be BUGN. This is your host, Sheldon Gay. As I say on each and every episode, thank you so much for being here, for listening, for being a part of this community. Today we have a special guest. Very, very excited. I have been on his podcast before and had a great time. And yeah, since then, been eager to have him here. With that, before we get started, as we always do, let's start with a visual description for those it might be helpful for. So again, my name is Sheldon Gay. I use pronouns he and him. I am a Black man with Black curly hair that's faded on the side and the back. I have light brown skin, a mustache, a little goatee. Today I have on a t-shirt of my design, which you may not be able to really see, but it says Decolonize Your Mind. Check it out on my website in the shop. Also have on a black wristwatch. Behind me, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see my background, which has some of my favorite personal items, like a pillow of my design, which also says labels don't have to feel like pathology, and some of my favorite books. And with that, let me tell you a little bit about our guest. Uh, Patrick Casale is an AuDHD, twice exceptional therapist, a TEDx speaker, and a soon-to-be published author and business coach. He's the founder of All Things Private Practice, LLC, and host of All Things Private Practice podcast, as well as co-host of Divergent Conversations, which is the podcast I was on before. He's also an owner of a group therapy practice in Asheville, North Carolina. Through international coaching, retreats, and speaking, Patrick helps entrepreneurs overcome self-doubt, perfectionism, and imposter syndrome while embracing authenticity. Really, really excited to hear a bit about that, especially, as an entrepreneur myself. He's known for coining the phrase, doubt yourself and do it anyway. Or sorry, doubt yourself, do it anyway. Let me not get the trademark messed up. Patrick, thank you so much for being here. I didn't know if you want to introduce yourself or, just kind of share a little bit about yourself. Otherwise, we'll just go ahead and get into the conversation.
Sure. Yeah, Sheldon, thanks for having me. We have been trying to make this happen for a long time, and I don't know if there are many people I would continuously try to reschedule with. I'd probably just delete it. So anyway, yeah, my pronouns are he, him. In my visual background, I have a charcoal green and gray and blue painting behind me of Anthony Bourdain. I am wearing a brown and tan t-shirt that has Smog from The Hobbit on it. I am white. I have brown hair and a somewhat decent beard, I'd say.
As someone who cannot fully grow one, I'd say it's definitely pretty decent. But yeah, so Patrick, let's kind of hop in here a little bit. We read your bio and kind of as we talked about, it's bios don't necessarily tell the full story, right? And so tell us a little bit about how you came to doing this work, excuse me, and what neurodivergence means to you.
Yeah. So all of my life, I've been drawn towards helping people. And I've always kind of gravitated towards people who I knew were struggling. And what I mean by that is, even in college in upstate New York, I befriended quite a few of the unhoused people in the community.
Mm,
And my friends would make fun of me. They'd be like, "Oh, you're going to talk to Joe again." And, like,
mm,
why do you
mhm,
care so much? And I was
mhm,
just always thinking, I can feel their pain
mhm,
pretty intensely.
mhm,
I'm a very intuitive person. I absorb a lot of energy. And my mom was a social worker. My dad was a teacher. I think I wanted to go against the grain and not do either of those professions.
mhm,
And then I had a pretty bad gambling addiction while I was in college and in early adulthood, and
mhm,
in and out of therapy, which was unbelievably helpful, and have been in and out of therapy my entire life. And I just realized that I think it was what I was meant to do at
mhm.
that time. And I started to pursue my master's in clinical mental health counseling, which I got back in 2015, which is wild. Feels like a
Yes.
whole other lifetime ago.
Right.
So that's kind of how I came to be here. I don't think sitting in my master's program in 2015, I ever foresaw my career going in the directions that it has.
Mhm,
I kind of assumed you either become a private practice therapist or you go work in community mental health, and that was it. I'm a very entrepreneurial person and always have been.
mhm,
I did not know I was ADHD or autistic in my program.
mhm.
We only talked about autism and ADHD probably for about a 30-minute conversation in our childhood development course. And it was never framed as autistic kids and ADHD kids turn out to be autistic ADHD adults.
As they actually grow up.
Right. So it was just never on my mind.
Mhm, mhm,
A lot of misdiagnoses to get to where I am,
mhm,
a lot of inaccurate diagnoses, some of which were somewhat accurate, I'd say. But I would say discovering that I was AuDHD later in life has really allowed me to see my life through a completely different lens, and it has answered a lot of questions.
yeah, yeah. I love this as well, only because it there's I've had interviews and conversations with other folks who I'll say come from the therapy world, and this is kind of a common thread. And to me, it is shocking because not just because of the work that I'm doing, but because how prevalent this experience actually is. And
Yeah.
so the idea that you're talking about a 30-minute, like, oh, for the kids kind of a conversation,
Yep.
um, it's just wild to me. Like
Yeah.
every single time I hear it, particularly because as you, I wouldn't say necessarily that you're alluding to, but I guess, sort of my inference from what you were sharing, right, is that there's what you realize is that a lot of the challenges that people are experiencing as adults are related to these undiagnosed or misdiagnosed experiences. And so the idea that, again, we're like, don't worry about that. It's like, but my therapy is going to bring me back to this potentially, so maybe we should think about
Yeah.
this in the meantime.
Yep.
um, so I didn't know if you had anything else to say about that, but I just think it's just, there are a lot of folks too, because this podcast is focused on those who are um, unaware or who are just starting to explore. And so I didn't know if you had any other things you wanted to share about that, but um, yeah, if you had anything else to share about that, fine. Otherwise, like I said, I'll kind of hop into the next question.
Sure. Yeah. I think we're doing people a disservice, and I think that was also 11 years ago. I would hope, fast forwarding,
Mm-hmm,
with all of the great advocacy that's happening in the
mm-hmm,
neurodiversity spaces
mm-hmm,
and in the giftedness spaces too,
mm-hmm,
that you would start to see more of this talked about more regularly and routinely.
mm-hmm,
But I still know an enormous amount of mental health therapists who are just not prepared to support people through their journeys,
mm-hmm.
and it's really unfortunate. It leaves a lot of people feeling left behind.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and I'm going to kind of like append to this next question. You should, or not necessarily reminded me, but you know, one of the things that was resonant between us was this whole gifted experience. And if I remember correctly, you were identified gifted early on. Is that correct? Okay, right. So then you had this giftedness, identity somehow, like before this, but then so far as like the ADHD and the autism, I guess as you're going through life and putting all this together, like what part of your life changed most immediately when you realized, oh, this is kind of like the full pot of soup that I've got going on over here.
Yeah. Um, with the giftedness piece early on in my life, it was more like, hey, you read at an advanced level, you're really intelligent. There was
Mm-hmm.
never any conversation about like, what are the struggles that you may be experiencing
Mm-hmm.
in terms of like navigating isolation and social situations and
Mm-hmm.
sense of self. That was just, it was always strengths based, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
here are all the ways you're really good at these things, but we're never going to talk about how you get there or how to support you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and then for the autism ADHD side, I discovered I'm 39 years old now to give context, but I discovered I was ADHD when I was 30 and autistic at 35.
Mm-hmm.
ADHD did not shock me,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think I had the same sort of reaction to ADHD versus autism. ADHD, I was like, okay, I am impulsive. I am reckless. I can be creative.
Right.
I can think of all the things. And I was like, yeah, it makes sense. I never really formulated it as like a core identity at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Discovering I was autistic really not only unlocked a lot for me from this like unrelenting search for meaning and the why behind things,
Mm-hmm.
but it also really has become foundationally who I am as my identity, and
Mm-hmm.
I had to work through a lot, and I mean a lot, of internalized ableism
Mm-hmm.
around that diagnosis
Mm-hmm.
because my initial reaction was rooted in it of like, wait, hold on, not me. Like I have a master's and two businesses, and I can make icon all the things that
Mm-hmm.
are,
Mm-hmm.
and I really had to deconstruct and relearn like what does it mean to be autistic.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and Dr. Megan Neff, a good friend of mine, my co-host on Divergent Conversations, has been instrumental and influential as she has for so many people, but in helping me kind of re-examine everything with a completely different set of eyes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. No. This is a really important point because I think, again, because a lot of the folks that I'm most looking to connect with through this podcast are those who are on this journey. And I've said for myself, like right now, um, the neurodivergent identity that I certainly claim is my giftedness, but I'm always open to, you know, tomorrow being like, you know what, maybe, whatever, right? Like I think there's this yeah, because again, a lot of the ways in which we typically think about or we're taught about ADHD, autism, whatever, dyslexia, whatever it is, those don't necessarily align with the full experience, particularly as an adult.
Yeah.
And so there's always this opportunity that you're going to bump into something and say, oh, wait, that is actually me.
Yeah.
And yeah, I know I've heard people wrestling with like you said, that internalized ableism around it. And I want to encourage others, as again we're hearing Patrick talk about this, and again, and we've talked with others in other episodes, like to just be compassionate with yourself around that, because um, yeah, this is a journey of learning ourselves, right? And so there may be things that we learn that we realize, dang, I was kind of like beating myself up about something that was a core part of who I am, that I love about myself, that I honor about myself, and um, expanding my perspective on what that means to be
Yeah.
what insert label is only helpful.
Yeah,
So
for
yeah,
sure.
go ahead. Go ahead. I didn't know if
No,
you.
no, I completely agree. I mean, I said I did a TEDx on autism acceptance and discovery, and one of the lines I said was like, the lens through which I now view the world has become crystal clear.
Mm-hmm.
It was so it was so broken, fractured, vague, shadow-esque for so long where
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't access my full sense of self.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for a lot of people who discover some of these things later in life into adulthood, it is kind of that experience of like, who the hell am I? And like,
Mm-hmm.
why has life been so hard all the time?
Yeah. Yeah. This is actually a good segue to the next question, which is like, do you feel like you spent more of your life feeling misunderstood by others or feeling like you were the one misunderstanding everyone else?
I think it's a combination of both.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I definitely have felt misunderstood throughout most of my life. I still feel that way in a lot of situations and have to over explain myself and
Mm-hmm.
give too much context. And, you see the eyes glaze over in the other person, and you're like,
Right.
oh shit, I'm talking too much.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I do think I also misunderstood a lot of people in terms of like when we're talking about almost the double empathy problem of
Mm-hmm.
we're missing each other. We're speaking two different languages, right? So misunderstanding other people's intentions, misunderstanding other people via communication, context cues, etc., or just social expectation. And then you start to internalize that of like something's clearly wrong with me. Like I am not moving through life the way other people are moving through life. And that I think is such a painful part of this experience in this existence.
Yeah. No, I mean, 100%. I think that that is, it applies, broadly across neurotypes. I, I think I shared this when I was on, Divergent Conversations, but like, I, one of the biggest ways in which I came to my realization was this thing of like, there's something different going on here. Like, it seems like
Yeah.
everybody else is, again, the example I usually share is like, it seems like everybody else is driving a car and I realized I was in the spaceship. So like all the different car maintenance things that I kept trying that it was like, this is not working. It's like, oh, because you have a completely, or a very different type of machine here.
Right.
And so, um, yeah, like that realization, can be challenging, but once you do have that realization, now, the way that you interact with yourself, the way that you interact with other people, like you said, it's so much more crystal clear. It's like, oh, this
Yeah.
makes so much more sense.
Yep.
Um, so I know you talked a little bit before about like gambling, your gambling addiction that you had, and I'm curious because I think there's this interesting like thing I've been noodling on just in general as I work in this spaces. How are um different elements of one's neurotype actually influencing, like whether they're enhancing or exacerbating or whatever the different challenges that we may have. So, like, how do you think giftedness has influenced the habits and possibly the challenges and patterns that you've noticed in your life, whether it be again the gambling addiction or other things that may have come up for you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think my brain goes to like chicken or the egg situation a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what
Mm-hmm.
came first? Was it this, or this? What led to this experience or decision? Which is probably like part of the giftedness in itself of like constantly examining everything,
Yeah.
just really trying to get to the bottom of things, right? And then you can conflate the two of those things with like, is that autism? Is that giftedness? Is it the combination of the two?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So my brain does a lot of that.
Yeah.
Um, and I often think about that of like, how did I end up in this massive amount of gambling addiction? Because as a therapist, taught to look at everything holistically, it could be so many things, right? We could
Mm-hmm.
be talking a genetic component. We could be talking
Mm-hmm.
like a social component where it's like, who are you spending time with and how is your social environment? Um, and then we look at neurology. What I think, and this is just my own take on this, is that for those of us gifted, autistic, ADHD, ADHD, whatever, who feel very alone and isolated in life
Mm-hmm.
from not only a social component, but just in general, you're going to reach for something to take away and alleviate that pain and that suffering. Some of us may reach for alcohol, marijuana, other substances. Some of us may channel it into working out all the time. Like there's going to be something. And for me, I have all this like pattern recognition skill set. It's going in a million different directions. And then like the ADHD side that really gravitates towards like being more sensory seeking and seeking out stimulation and dopamine. Gambling is the perfect answer,
It's there.
unfortunately. And then you add in a brain that is susceptible to like potentially being manipulated or taken advantage of. And gambling does that to the millionth degree. There's so much psychology involved in like building casinos and how you structure them and how you want people to show up and experience them from the moment they walk in. And for me, it was just all of it. And it felt like invigorating. I felt very alive in it until it became a situation that I had absolutely no control in. And then it became very, very, very dark, very, very quickly. And add in the combination of just already feeling alone and alienated and different. And I can't tell you how many nights of my life when I was in college, in my undergrad, I spent in dark, smoky, sketchy, dangerous environments and casinos and poker rooms and things like that, because I was almost surrounded by people who were also suffering in a way. And you're almost suffering together. And it made some of the human experience feel more relatable.
I just got goosebumps at that last part. Like I thought, I mean, everything that you were sharing, I had a whole thought, but then this, when you said that it's like being in a room with others who are, in pain, and there's this sort of shared human experience, like that is super insightful because, it's interesting. I was having a conversation with someone recently about just let's just put it broadly at addiction and like why people kind of get caught up in addictions. And one of the things I was sharing from my perspective is that um there's this humanity beneath it, that there's just seeking for something, right?
Yeah.
And because we know that humans want to have this sense of connection, and how you get there, like you said, it's like that could be through a number of different things.
Yeah.
Some more straightforward than others, but the bottom line being is, when, like you said, when you tear away all the layers, it's like I just want to be in a
Yeah.
space where I feel like I belong, feel like someone else knows the my experience as well, like that, that there's some sort of um community at whatever level that is. And so I know for me, giftedness can definitely be very, very isolating. Very,
Yeah.
very, very, very isolating. Um, I'll just say really quickly, I was actually watching this documentary recently called I Am Paul E. Murray. And for those who aren't familiar, I'll put it in the show notes, but please go, watch it. It's an absolutely amazing documentary about um, a black woman who did a million different things, who is very clearly gifted. But so as it relates to this conversation, though, Paulie spent a lot of her or their life like kind of living in the in between, and being someone whose thoughts and vision was so far ahead that like people were literally laughing at the ideas, but then 10-15 years later, here they
Right.
are, like,
Sure.
this is amazing.
Yeah.
And that is a very resonant experience, for me. um and so again, just knowing that, and how it's one thing to say, I don't know, I need to find other people who cook, right? Like, okay, I like cooking, I want to
Yeah.
find other people who cook. Like, that's you know that's a little bit different than, we're talking about like the inner workings of how your mind is even wired to even experience the world.
Yeah.
um and the numbers are so much smaller, and it's just harder to identify. Like I can't go to a it's again, if I'm looking for other people who cook, like I can go to a cooking class and just like it's much harder to find that experience. But again, when you feel so cut off from that ability, I mean, it's just a fundamental like subconscious level, like, desire. It can pull you into spaces that you otherwise would be like, how did I find myself in this, you know, in this scenario? So
Totally.
thank you. Sorry, were you going to say something?
No, I was just agreeing with you. And
Oh,
also, like, just an important, like, something that always comes to my mind in this conversation is like, Johan Hari did a TED talk years ago, and one of his lines was like, the opposite of addiction is connection. And I
mm,
believe that wholeheartedly.
mm-hmm,
And I think that's why so many people end up in that space, right, of suffering and struggling and isolation and feeling broken or defective or different.
mm-hmm.
A lot of society would say like character flaws, which is
Yeah, yeah,
a whole nother thing. But nevertheless, I think that the opposite of addiction is connection. And when you feel so different, like you're saying, neurologically,
mm-hmm,
and the way your brain is wired, and you're
mm-hmm.
already like, you know, 10 steps behind everyone else because it feels like you didn't get the manual on how to do
Right,
life.
right.
It's really easy to reach for things that are gonna give you a little bit of relief.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Let's shift gears a little bit. This is again something I'm really interested in, and honestly, is a part of my like a key part of my journey right now is around entrepreneurship, and doing this work, particularly doing it not off the side of my desk, but just like as full time, and is a challenging thing. In the last 5 years or so, I've been full time on entrepreneurship, but kind of like you said, I've always had this entrepreneurial streak, as it were. Like I've always said, oh, you know what, this is a really cool idea. Like let me try to see if I can make this thing work. Do you think gifted and neurodivergent people are naturally drawn to entrepreneurship, or do you feel like many of us are pushed towards it because traditional environments don't fit us? Like what things should we be keeping in mind as we navigate that journey?
Yeah. I think it's both. It's a both and situation.
Mm-hmm,
So I think a lot of us end up in entrepreneurial spaces because traditional work environments are just not supportive
mm-hmm,
of our needs. You get kind of thrown into a box. Here's what we do every day. This is how we've always done it. We don't think outside of that box. And,
mm-hmm.
even if you get your work done in a quarter of the time, it doesn't matter. You got to be here for the entire time.
Yeah.
Never made sense to me.
No. Yep.
It's just,
Yeah.
I think a lot of us are kind of pushed towards that place because of we our own necessities in terms of like our sensory experiences, our outside of the box thinking, the way we process information
Mm-hmm,
can be very different. Maybe you have a lot of like overwhelming creative ideas. Maybe you end up in like hyper focused or monotropic flow states sometimes where you are just able to just create an enormous amount in short bursts.
mm-hmm,
I think we are pushed in that direction societally by saying like the traditional 9 to 5 is just that doesn't work for our brains.
mm-hmm,
And then I think a lot of us seek it out because we want autonomy and creative freedom and
mm-hmm,
the ability to make our own decisions is, we cannot sleep on that. That's,
mm-hmm,
having that control and ownership really important. And then again, just going back to like outside of the box thinking and trial and error and, trying to figure out if you can get things to work a certain way or being willing to tweak them and revise them and like edit them down. And there's kind of a challenge in it, which is kind of enjoyable too. And I love being able to control my situation and my environment. And I love being able to work from home. And I love all of the things that came with it.
yeah,
And I think that COVID, the onset of COVID back in March of 2020, pushed a lot of people who did not know that they were neurodivergent and gifted in general
mm-hmm,
into work from home scenarios where they were all of a sudden like, oh, this is pretty great.
yeah,
I don't have to be around other people while I work on things. I get to control the temperature. I don't have to have the lights on. Like
yes,
I can work within the sleep schedules that work best for my brain. So it was all this like domino effect. And now we see this like digital nomad entrepreneur era
mm-hmm,
And I think a lot of it has to do with that.
Yeah. 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 Plus one, plus one, plus one, plus like everything. It's funny. I was just talking to my mom the other day, and one of the things I was talking to her about is just this full realization of how important autonomy is for me.
Mhm.
Um, that is one of the reasons why, corporate life just wasn't a great fit. Um, but, more broadly, just thinking about how I just like to move through life, period.
Right.
Right. Just entrepreneurship offers me that opportunity to say, yeah, I'm gonna grind and get whatever, all these things done,
Yep.
and I'm good, right? Like
Yep.
I've knocked it up. I'm not sitting here. One of my previous guests, he used the term productivity performance, I believe is what he said, right? Like,
Mhm.
this productivity theater that a lot of folks go through where it's like, you're in the office and it's like, I have to pretend like I'm
Right.
like super busy. And it's like, why are
Mhm.
we doing this? I mean,
Yeah.
it's not actually helping us, right? So why don't we just kind of figure out what our, excuse me, give people the opportunity to figure out what the core tasks are, whatever, let
Yep.
them knock that out
Yep.
in that amount of time. And then like, let's not spend time like surveilling them about like, what are you doing? How
Yep.
many, like, listen. Um, but I agree. I think for a lot of folks, particularly again, as we go back to this thought of those of us who either are unaware or haven't necessarily quite claimed the neurodivergent identity, or those of us who aren't able to unmask in the same ways that others are, that
Yep.
these corporate spaces can be, you know, uh, more challenging. And so
100%.
finding ways to say, you know what, like, let me manifest my own space that works for me, definitely becomes super, super enticing. And yeah, like it is always so awkward to say like I'm grateful for COVID because of obviously the health impacts, the deaths and the other health impacts that are certainly at the forefront for that. But I definitely think that it was helpful for the world, not just U.S. society, to be able to see a lot of these stories that they were telling us about, like, oh, if people work from home, like the whole world would collapse, and it's like, no.
Yep. All of
it,
that was proven wrong in the blink of an eye,
yes,
right?
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So, okay, so yeah, thanks. And actually, are there any other? I know again you work with, a lot of entrepreneurs. Are there any other tips for entrepreneurs as they are navigating this journey and um, dealing with the self doubt, and because especially early on, the checks aren't generally guaranteed to be rolling in. So like, are there any tips that you have for folks around that?
Things that I've found like to be really crucial for a variety of reasons are like number one, foundationally and always anchoring into your why. Why am
Mm-hmm.
I doing this? Why is this important to me? Why is this the thing that I am like that keeps me up at night or motivates me to make this a thing that I want
Mm-hmm.
to have success in? Values alignment is huge as well. And I think it's about working with your brain and not against it.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's going to give different prescriptive advice of like, here are these coaches with these plans. And if you don't follow these plans, you're never going to be successful. If you
Mm-hmm.
do, you will be. Social media has really created this shiny object syndrome situation where it's always comparison traps of I'm not doing enough.
Yeah.
And you have to try to mute the noise or turn the noise down a little bit, focusing in on what you can control. And I think you have to be really kind to yourself because there are going to be a lot of moments where you want to just throw in the towel or
Yeah.
just convince yourself, like, see, this is why I'm not set up to be successful, or like, here's a reason why I'll never be able to do it. You gotta be able to pace yourself and not destroy yourself in the meantime because it's really easy to jump into neurotypical advice about what productivity means.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're in creation, We want to be around people who have similar mindsets, who are experiencing similar struggles. I don't want to surround myself with people who are going to tell me that my process, the way I do things, is not right,
Mm-hmm.
or that it's too outside of the box. I want people who are going to be like, yeah, that's actually a really good idea. Or have you tried doing A, B, and C just to see if that works?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think who you surround yourself with is crucial.
Yeah.
Um, it's really easy to surround yourself with negativity,
Mm-hmm.
with people who have also convinced themselves that doing the things you want to do cannot work or won't be successful.
Yeah.
You want to jump in on that?
No, no. I mean, yeah. Well, I wanted to let you finish, but you're like, this is a really great point. So I mean, if you want to let me kind of slide, and then that's
Yeah,
fine. But
go for it. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. So like, as you were saying that, I think one of the biggest things is around recognizing how much of people's advice is really about how they feel about themselves and their perspective,
yep,
um, and not so much about what they're seeing in you.
exactly.
I know that was an initial, challenge, because a lot of times, particularly when you're first starting out entrepreneurship, those voices are the people closest to you.
Yeah,
So you're thinking, these people should see whatever, whatever, right? Or why are they, not honoring this vision that I have, right? And it feels personal.
yeah,
But then you realize maybe they tried something and it didn't work. And so they're scared
yep,
for, really they're feeling that,
exactly. It's
fear.
it's projection, right? It's
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
what narratives have they experienced or been fed throughout their lives? And I have two examples for this. One, when I left my community mental health job back in 2017 to start my own private practice, my manager of my program took me out to lunch, and we were friends at the time. And
Mhm.
she let me know, she was like, I expect you to be asking me for your job back within 30 days because nobody makes it on their own. And I really internalized that at first.
Mm.
Then I've come to realize, like, okay, she was just maybe grieving that I was leaving, and
Mhm. Mhm.
maybe resentful or even jealous to some degree. And
Mhm.
that was not mine to take on. Right. But
Mhm.
I did internalize it in that moment. And I did convince myself that that could be a reality. And I also remember like a family member saying, like, who is going to call you and hire you and pay you to do therapy? That's not how the world works. And if you surround yourself with people who are telling you those things,
Yeah.
you are going to believe those
Yeah.
things. You're going to make them your own narratives, and your inner criticism is going to go through the roof.
Yeah.
So every time you make a mistake, every time you fail, every time you struggle, guess what's going to rear its ugly head?
Yeah. 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 No, that's a really good point. And, thank you for sharing those examples. One, if nothing else, it reminds me of when I left corporate and there were a lot of people kind of like this idea that I would just stop and be like, wait a second, you're leaving? Like, what?
Yeah.
And so just so you know, like, here are these options for you. And I'm like, cool, thank you. If I need them, great. But
Right.
like, this isn't, the fact that you don't see. I've even left other corporate jobs that people, there was one like smaller company that I left and to go to a different company, but they were kind of like, yeah, I don't think they're going to last. And, you'll be coming back or something like that. I'm just like, okay.
Fuel to the fire, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
because I've used that message from that job
Hmm.
so many times to be like,
Hmm.
no, keep
Hmm.
going, keep going. Like, this is the way I need to, like,
Hmm.
constantly remind myself that I can't let other people dictate how I move forward and move through the world.
Yeah. Yeah. No, exactly. Um, let's shift a little bit. And this is like, I'm I think this is something that um is super expansive about this conversation. Let me say it that way, that there will be many people who will be able to relate to this, whether they are neurodivergent or not. But you know one of my favorite things about your journey, kind of going back to what you said, is that like you didn't realize that, you had ADHD, and that the autism was even later than that, right? And so, um, one of my favorite things about your journey is learning about how your diagnosis transformed your marriage. And I know for some of us, the diagnosis can create barriers. All of a sudden, when we talk about things like, ableism and, pathologizing and all this, it just can create kinds of barriers to those relationships. So, what would you say was different about your relationship? And yeah, tell us a little bit more about what that's meant for you since your diagnosis.
Yeah. Okay. Great question. We could have a whole episode on this. So I've been married to my wife for over 12 years.
Mhm.
My wife is a Black woman from the South and also is neurodivergent, although undiagnosed. Just confirmed by peer review, aka me.
Peer review is
Yeah.
hilarious.
So,
Yeah.
um, okay, where to start? Before pre-diagnosis, I think it was challenging.
Mhm.
Undiagnosed ADHD, there was a lot of romanticism of what life could be and how the grass could be greener elsewhere, right? So,
Mhm.
like, we should just pick up our lives and move. Like, that was one pervasive thought. And she was like, no, I have my career here. I'm not just like moving to Seattle
Mhm.
because it sounds better. And that was like woven throughout
Mhm.
the thread.
Mhm.
Also, misinterpretation and miscommunication was pretty rampant because I didn't know I was autistic ADHD, but
Mhm.
with or without the diagnosis, still the same person.
Mhm.
Um, and she did not know that she was an ADHDer. So we're missing each other a lot in communication at first, and misinterpretation, miscommunication. There was a lot of examples of like she has a big family. They get together a lot. And I love them. But
Yeah, right.
it is really overwhelming for me
Yep.
because I am really hypersensitive. So at first, I would either push myself to go to family gatherings and I would be very irritable or very overwhelmed or very quiet and I would shut down. She would interpret that as, you just don't like my family, which is really important to me. The reality is, right, fast forwarding to now, okay, Patrick is really hypersensitive. He gets really overwhelmed in loud social situations. And now it's not even a question. She's just like, I'm going to my mom's for this thing. I assume you don't want to come. I've already let them know. We're all on the same page. And I will, if I have the capacity, I will try to make the effort, especially when it's important to her. But it's better off for both of us if we can maintain these separate lives in a way where she's got a lot of friend groups, a lot of hobbies. She's in like 3 book clubs. She's very social. She's very extroverted. I'm very introverted. I am more than okay with like being in my house, spending time one on one or in a small group. It's always got to be at the same places for me that are familiar and comfortable. My friends are always like, "Let me guess, you want to go to wherever?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course.
Yep.
I know what to expect."
Yep.
Um, but the difference now is we are able to understand each person's rationale
Mhm.
and reasoning behind the reaction. So, like,
Mhm.
she's very accommodating to my sensory sensitivity. So, I'm really hypersensitive to smell. So, if she's cooking in like the air fryer, for example, she will now take the air fryer on our front porch and cook out there because smells of food will like linger and disrupt my sleep and be a whole thing for like 3 or 4 days. So, it's all about whose support needs are more prevalent in this moment. How do we ensure that we are looking out for each other and protecting each other from things? We have a situation going on right now that I don't want to go too far into detail about. Very overwhelming. It's disrupting both of our livelihoods. And I was really spiraling last week and really hyper focused on like, how do I fix this problem? And she was like, listen, I need to break your focus. I can see you are really, really in it right now. I need you to get out of the house. I need you to go to a hotel for a few days because the thing that's going on at home, you're going to be stuck in if you are here. And like, she's very good about seeing me in that way and vice versa. And so now with the language and understanding, far less instances of like maybe any sort of rupture where we are taking it personally or feeling resentful or frustrated. And now it's more just about like, how do we best support each other to get through the day?
Yeah.
Because life is freaking hard enough as it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I yeah. Again, I love this. I loved one of the things that came to mind was a video that I saw you all do where I think she was helping you pick out like your favorite shirt. I
Yep.
think it was.
Yep.
And to me, this was like the best description of understanding your partner
Yep.
and honoring who they are and how that changes a relationship and therefore how important it is going back to the beginning of our conversation today
Yep.
around if we don't understand these things, if we don't even know that these things are playing out,
Right.
um, they have significant impacts on relationships. Things that you'd say, I've personally been in relationships where, similarly, you're like this pattern, this need, um, there's something here, and if we
Yep.
figure that out, this could probably be, super easy. I mean, even
Yeah.
talking about going to different events. I tend to be introverted, but when it comes to family events and different things like that, like I'll find energy to go and do those things. And I'm definitely, I'm kind of like an ambivert more than I am just like totally introverted.
Same.
But I've had a partner who the social anxiety just was too much. And
Right.
so there was a lot of miscommunication about like expectations of do you come or do you not come? And for me,
Right.
I definitely at the time was like, it seems like this is a challenge. Like, feel free to stay home,
Yep.
but because there are people kind of in their mind are like, no, this is going to mean that whatever. You kind of start telling stories, right? And it's like, no, like if you're here, like I don't want anybody to, 'cause as you said, like if you show up and your energy isn't um if you don't have the capacity in that moment, it's
Yeah.
for me it's like you shouldn't be here. Like I don't want you to, because we're going to go home and
Yep.
it's just not going to be a good idea, right? It's just like we're
100%.
you're not going to feel good, you know it may lead to some little unnecessary miscommunication or
Yep.
whatever. And so, but this is why, again, it's just so beautiful, how you and your wife, because you had a period. It wasn't like you came into the marriage knowing these things.
Right.
And
Exactly.
so you have that kind of before and after. But the fact that you also have a partner, because as I said, like we both know that not every partner is, you know, accommodating and understanding and willing to go cook outside. A
100%.
lot of partners are kind of like, man, you better whatever. Like it's not
Deal
that
with-
bad, you
Right.
know.
Yeah.
So deal with it. And it's like, okay, but like, how does that? How do you turn off? I tell people I wish that these sensory things were just things you could just flip a switch on and say, oh, you know what? There's a smell.
Yep. I know.
It's like,
I know. I know. It would be a magic cure, we'd get rich. Um,
no, it's
I do want to just go back to what you were saying about relationships.
yeah.
I think when in partnership, when you discover some of these things later in life, it can really disrupt the partnership.
Mhm,
Um, if you don't have a partner or even friend group who is willing to learn and understand,
mhm,
it can almost feel like I married this completely other person.
mhm,
You're so different than when we used to spend time together or be friends together. Now you have all these different needs or preferences, and like it can create a lot of rupture in relationship, whether it be platonic or romantic. So
mhm, mhm.
I did just want to name that too as a complication.
Yeah, no. Thank you for naming it, and yeah, and I'll add maybe a little bit of extra spice on top or flavor on top, to say that it's important to name that and to acknowledge that that is that is a challenge. Like if you kind of quote unquote knew what you were signing up for, and
Yep.
then all of a sudden there's something different.
Yeah.
And um, without judgment, that's something that we all, have to deal with. I mean, and or that we all have to deal with in a broad sense, right? That
Right.
the longer that you are in relationship with people, needs, challenges, ways of being are going to change. And so
Yep.
and those it's not it's not non-trivial, right?
No. No.
It's one of those things that uh there's compassion needed on both sides,
Yeah.
because there is someone who's saying, okay, I've got to, and as we specifically talking about neurodivergence, like I've got to learn some things that I didn't even know about before, or
Exactly.
so yeah, thank you for naming that.
Yeah.
And yeah, so like I just, again, I think this is just such a, like I said, we have a whole episode just about this. I don't know if I've had a chance to mention to you, but some people have mentioned to me about eventually doing a PhD. And if and when that does happen, this is very much so a core of what I would want to focus on, because I think that there is so much to be said for how particularly undiagnosed um, neurodivergence impacts relationships. And I certainly would want to look at it from, communities that are melanated and marginalized, because we
Yeah.
tend to have even less access to diagnosis and even understanding about, you know, how those things could be playing out. And so, yeah, we could do a whole thing about this, but
If you do a PhD on that and do that as your dissertation, that'd be awesome, because very fascinated to hear about mixed neurotype partnerships, neurodiverse
mhm,
partnerships in general. And then,
mhm,
like you said, those who are multiply marginalized who have even less privilege and less access, that becomes a really complicated, compounded situation,
mhm,
um, even with the best of intentions.
mhm.
So, yeah, that would be amazing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, let me get a couple other pieces in place, and then
Sure.
I'll be on it. So I'm if someone is discovering their giftedness later in life and still feels like they're too much or not enough, what would you want them to know?
Whew. I'm so good at giving other people advice, but not taking it, it's a true therapist quality of not practicing what we preach. Because my therapist had, I'd be like, oh, you should like think about your inner child and what they weren't getting and what they needed more of and how you can reparent them. And
Right.
my brain is like, but I don't do that. So, um, okay. So I think it's messy. I think I always want to give permission for it to be messy. I
Mhm,
want there to be permission for things to be overwhelming,
mhm,
um, while you kind of dissect all of this and deconstruct it, giving yourself permission to just have bad days, to
mhm.
have struggles where you're thinking like some of this feels really real, like the too muchness, the otheredness,
Yeah,
and finding your people. Going back to that again,
yeah.
finding your people. It does not mean it has to be a romantic partnership, but
Mhm,
having friendships and people in your corner who you can talk about this to, whether that be a therapist plus, and it should not just be a therapist. Let me just say that as a
mhm,
therapist.
mhm, mhm,
One on one therapy is a privilege,
mhm,
and
mhm,
not everyone has the resources to participate in weekly one on one therapy.
mhm,
Community healing is so crucial. And that means the same thing for giftedness, neurodivergent experience, etc.
mhm.
To have people in your life who get it, who, when you say something that feels like you're the only one dealing with it, they can be like, I hear you. And I also experience A, B, and C very similarly.
Mhm.
I think that can feel so healing and so important.
Yeah. No, I mean, I again 100% agree. Going back to this whole thing about connection, and I'll even tell you, like right now, this is, there's sort of this cyclical thing, but like right now, I'm definitely in one of those cycles where it, again, it's like this feeling of uh, isolation. So every time I'm hearing about someone who has, who kind of just understands, maybe not exactly the same,
Right.
but just who can understand, you know, uh, how did you describe it earlier when you were talking about like this giftedness of like always trying to like deconstruct things and
Mhm.
just even just that part, right? Just being like, yeah,
Yeah.
like I see things and it's not as if I remember in my life people, kind of calling this like overthinking of like, why are you like, and it's like, this is not, it's not so much of a choice as I'm sitting here like,
Exactly.
I'd love to just,
Right.
use my, it's just like my
Sure.
brain starts,
I'd love to put myself through pure torture right now. It
exactly,
sounds fun.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, finding your people, um, is a powerful thing. And like you said, therapy is a privilege and not everybody has access to it. And so, um, just finding those healing spaces, um,
S
it,
Yeah.
yeah,
Super important.
yeah,
Super important.
yeah,
And, you know, I just wanna name this publicly, like, if you need to ever talk, we can do that. You can message me. I don't want you to feel alone in that.
mhm,
And, I agree with you where sometimes we can't help ourselves but go into these deep existential loops.
yes,
And the people around us who don't
mhm,
can think like, why is this consuming? Like, why are we bringing this up
yeah,
again?
yeah,
And you're like, because I haven't gotten to the answer. And it is taking every second of my day.
yeah,
And I just want the noise to like mellow out.
yeah,
All I want is like the peace that comes with like having some sort of validity or understanding.
mhm,
Yeah,
yeah. No,
with you on that.
that no, no notes, no additions to
My
that.
my wife will look at me and be like, "Why? Why are we talking about this again?" And I'm like, "Ariel, we haven't figured it out. My brain is still thinking of all of the angles."
I'm just cracking up because yeah, this is 100% resident. In the interest of time, let's kind of move on to the next question, which
Sure.
is, you know, again, we're talking about doing all this work and living authentically, being ourselves, and it's easy to say that, but
Mhm.
as we know, and kind of even and kind of touched on a little bit when it comes to like relationships and like when you start to realize this is my authentic self and like it comes with some challenges. So like what has authenticity required of you and what has it rewarded you with in turn?
Hmm. Man, such a
Mhm.
big question, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I've always wondered why people have been really drawn to me all my life, whether it be personally or professionally. And people are always just like, "You're so authentic, you're so real, you're so raw." And in my mind, I'm like, "But I don't know any other way to be, so I'm not trying to constantly live like this. It's
Yeah.
just my reality," right? Um, but I think that authenticity requires psychological and emotional safety. And
Mm,
a lot of
mhm.
us, again, going back to what you were saying before, multiply marginalized people, sometimes you can't just be your authentic self. That's why anytime I see content creators like unmask at all costs in
Yeah.
all situations, it's like, wait, let's pump the brakes a little
Yeah.
bit. Let's think about safety and privilege, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So that foundationally has to be there. Safety has to be there for authenticity. And you'll
Mhm.
see a lot of people say, like, oh, set boundaries in every area of your life, say no to everything, just be you. And it's like, okay,
Yeah.
sure. And dot,
Right.
dot, dot. Like, it's not always possible.
Mhm. Mhm.
Authenticity to me means living in alignment. Am I in
Mm, mhm.
alignment
Mhm.
with my values, the things that I feel like are really important pillars or cornerstones of my life? Can I check those boxes more often than not? If I can, great. Can I authentically connect to my sense of self, which has been masked for so long, even making me feel like I don't even know who I am or what I like to do? Can I really start to access that, which is really complicated, really hard? It's not an easy task. Can I live in a way where I can openly state what is on my mind, how I'm feeling, what my preferences are? Can I be my unfiltered, raw version of myself? in a lot of situations for me as a cishet white man, the answer is yes, more often than not. I don't have to often like check myself, but I'm always brought back to reality when my wife is like, maybe you shouldn't put A, B, and C out on social media. Maybe people shouldn't know this about our lives. Like, so I think there's got to be a middle ground in some ways. It's not like an all or nothing, which our brains tend to really enjoy.
Yeah. Yeah. That clean cut is there's a particular joy in just having that clean cut.
Mhm.
Is not unfortunate. So unfortunately, it's not how much of life is set up.
No.
And yeah, I mean, again, I just want to continue to validate this thing around understanding that, yeah, as I've said in multiple places, my saying is know when to wear your hoodie, right?
Yeah.
And it's this, again, this thing around understanding, like, I can keep this core part of myself, right? Like, I put my hoodie on when it's appropriate.
Yep.
If it's 100, 10 degrees outside, I'm not going to wear that hoodie, but I just take it off and keep it with me.
Right.
And um yeah, not every scenario is it going to be safe to completely unmask.
No.
All situations aren't created equal, and
No.
so, um, but knowing that you don't have to completely not be yourself, because that's, I think, the biggest fear is, like, you don't have to become a completely different person. You can just kind of understand how to uh, curtail or just kind of like um, fit it, find your alignment in that space. I want to use that
Yeah.
phrase. I love the alignment piece.
Yeah.
Um,
I think different spaces are going to require different versions of you, right?
yeah, yeah,
And I think you mentioned the hoodie reference when you came on Divergent
hmm
Conversations. I
hmm
really like that.
yeah, yeah.
And
And oh, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, there are just going to be moments where it's not safe or comfortable for you to be authentically yourself. And you have to, instead of blaming yourself or feeling like it's an issue with you,
Hmm
just trying to figure out like moment to moment, certain environments and situations are going to require some masking.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
you can't often just go into a job interview and be your complete 100% unmasked authentic self as much as we would like to. It neurotypical standards,
yeah,
sometimes that means you have to play the game a little bit.
yeah. And I wish that we had a whole bunch more time, because that's a topic that actually came up in a gifted space I was part of this weekend, but that's a separate conversation. But
Yeah.
I just wanted to also say that, you know finding authenticity does come with a bunch of great things. Like, yeah, we start to realize how much energy we've been spending, performing and masking and doing things that aren't in alignment. And
Yeah.
so, um again, I love this word about alignment, because when you're in alignment, whether or not there's even a little bit of masking, like, you realize how much better you feel, how much better you show up in
Yeah.
spaces, um, because of that. Um,
100% agree with that.
so let's round out. What are one or two keys to neurodivergent healing and thriving that you'd like to share?
I love how let's round out with a really complicated. Okay. So, number one, I think is deconstructing internalized ableism. I think that's a really important piece of healing and also creating that sense of self. Getting through and like deconstructing those myths and misconceptions and your own narratives of what it means to be autistic, ADHD, gifted, other forms of neurodivergence. What does this mean to me? And where did these narratives come from? That for me feels foundational. Number two, I think it's about starting to access areas of joy. Where are the things that I find really enjoyable and how can I put them into my life again? Because if I look around my office right now, it is filled with special interest stuff. So y'all can't see this, but I have an enormous amount of like Ted Lasso stuff over here. There's Lord of the Rings stuff everywhere. There's Anthony Bourdain stuff everywhere. There are like animal paintings, drawings, etc. everywhere. fidgets and different like tactile stimulation tools everywhere, where I may have been embarrassed to be in that space or have that be visible
Yeah.
pre-discovery. So it is about reconnecting, like I said before, and I mean it this time, to your inner child. Because getting into playfulness and like childlike wonder is not something we do enough as adults, but it really is healing. And for those of us who are thinking so expansively, it really does help us reconnect to versions of ourselves that we forgot or were lost way back in the day and left behind.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, absolutely beautiful. I love the part. I mean, both things, but certainly about the joy and the making sure that you have at least one space where
Yeah,
you can just all of your all of your things, whatever those special interests, whatever those things that just bring you that, as I say, like the brain sparkle, like please, like find and create those spaces. It's a beautiful thing. Um,
100% agreed.
what are one or two things you wish the world knew or built more capacity for?
Mm.
Mhm.
These are such big questions.
Yes.
It's such a representation of what giftedness is, though, is like thinking in these big existential questions. Like if we talked about mortality and like the sands in the hourglass running out, man, we could have a cool conversation.
Yeah.
Um, okay. So one, I think because we live in a world that is centered in neuronormativity,
Mhm.
I wish that we had more people who were willing to be curious.
Mm.
Be curious, not judgmental, to
Mhm.
quote the fictitious Ted Lasso and Walt Whitman.
Mm.
Um, so being curious, right? Just being curious about how other people move through the world and experience it. That's why Bourdain is so special to me,
Mhm.
because he was one of the first pioneers in showcasing what is it like in other cultures? What's it really like to get out of Western media and to eat food with people, to ask questions, to be curious about their day to day? I thought that was so beautiful in how he would go to places like Iran and showcase, like, look at how people are living.
Mhm.
Like, look at what we are not seeing,
Mhm. Mhm.
and how so much of the human experience is about belonging and desire for belonging.
Mhm.
So that primary, I think that's foundational. Be curious. Number two, I don't know if there is a number two for me, honestly, because like I feel like that's so important. The
Yeah.
curiosity piece can lead to such interesting discovery,
Yeah.
not only for yourself but for other people, because we exist in bubbles sometimes of like, if I'm experiencing this way, that means everybody is experiencing life this way, and that is really not accurate to
Yeah.
the 100th degree. Like,
Yeah.
it's not even close to being
Yeah.
accurate.
No, I am so like gosh, I'm so glad that you like brought it there. Because as we were talking earlier, one of my biggest things right now is, and I think maybe one of the things that I try to do the most is to demonstrate how much we take for granted this perspective on how other people are thinking. So, like, I did a talk, I don't know however long ago it was, maybe about a month or so ago. And I remember even just giving the example of if we just super quick simple example around the dress from many years ago where people were talking about, is it, what is it, white and gold or blue and black, I think it was the two options, right? There were
Mhm.
so many people who just were like fighting, like, how could you possibly? And it's like, for me, it was this demonstration that humanity, we're having, like, we don't even, we couldn't imagine someone seeing blue and black or white, like, but it's an acknowledgement. Wait a second. This is not even super complex, right? This is
Right.
not even something super esoteric, right? And if we can literally look at the same picture and see it differently, what must that also mean for how we're seeing the rest of our life and the rest of the world? And
Right.
therefore, how do we get curious about that? Because now it's like, okay, well, if you see this dress differently, what else do you see differently that I've taken for granted that now, oh, you know what? That makes so much more sense. Or you know what? Oh, that's really cool. Let me try that out. But yeah, just being curious about yourself, being curious about others. I think, like you said, that's like a key that unlocks so many different doors.
I think that was really well said. I can't agree with you more.
Well, great, because now I feel good about that. But listen, Patrick, this has been an absolutely fantastic conversation. Um, I I'm so grateful. And I want for people to be able to stay in contact with you and your work. So tell us a little bit more about your projects. I know that you talked about, I don't know if you're ready to talk a little bit about the book that's coming upcoming. Excuse me, but tell us how we can support
Yeah.
you and stay connected with
Oh, the book. Oh, the book.
you.
The bane of my existence. So yeah, I've really appreciated this. As we were talking, I was just actually sending you an email inviting you onto my podcast.
Great. I'll be there.
So my podcast is currently called, for all of you who listen to podcasts, All Things Private Practice, but we are rebranding it to the Neurodivergent Entrepreneur Podcast, and that is on all major platforms and YouTube. But so you can go there. My website is called allthingspractice.com, but that is also getting a major rebrand. My Instagram is probably where I'm the most active, Patrick.Casale, and my Substack, the AuDHD Journeys, I'm very active on right now as well. I am also writing a book on late in life autism discovery called So You're Autistic, Now What? And that will be out in March of 2028. My publisher is Balance Imprint, imprint of Hachette. Oh man, what else? I have a summit happening in Portland, Maine, September 1st to the 3rd for neurodivergent entrepreneurs, and there are still a few spots left. So you can check that out on my website. What else do I have going on? Oh, my social media manager would kill me if I didn't say. I'm also in the process of creating the Neuropreneur Circle community. It'll be a membership for neurodivergent entrepreneurs. That will be launching in early September. So you can get on the wait list so that you're one of the first to lock in like foundational members pricing. I'm going to stop talking now, and it's a lot of information. Sorry.
No, I mean, it's beautiful that you're doing all of this work. And yeah, I will make sure everything that I can, I'll put into the show notes for folks. And if nothing else, right, like they'll be able to reach out to you as things unfold. But again, thank you so much, Patrick. And I will honor that that invite, but I am really grateful that you showed up, and I'm glad that we worked to make sure that this conversation happens. So thank you.
This was great, man. You're an incredible and amazing inspiration to the community, and I'm really grateful for what you're doing. And I'm here rooting for you however I can be. And the offer is very genuine. If you ever need to talk and feel less alone, I am always online. Chronically, it's a problem. So,
okay, sounds good. All right, man.
All right, thanks, Sheldon. Bye.
Thank you for joining me on another episode of I Must Be Buggin'. I hope you felt seen, safe, and celebrated by what you heard today. Don't forget to visit my website, sheldongaysbuggin.com, where you can catch all of my episodes, book me to speak, and check out my merch. Don't hesitate to hit me up on socials either. I'm eager to hear your thoughts, your experiences, and your stories. Remember, this podcast is all about sharing humanized narratives about who we are and how we contribute to the beautiful and necessary diversity of humanity. This is our place to unmask and just be. And if you've enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a friend, leave a review, and subscribe. It helps our people find community. So until next time, stay up and enjoy who you were meant to be. Ashe.